We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back and here to unveil some of the most wacky, astonishing, and damnable things uttered by politicians and the chattering class on our signature Say What segment with longtime host of Liberty Nation Radio, Mr. Tim Donner.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And away we go with the latest thrill-packed edition of Say What. And of course, at the top of the heap in our nation's capital, things are not going well for the dream team of Biden and Harris. The Joe and Kamala show's been met with almost universal thumbs-down reviews, with Biden's approval dropping into the 30s in 3 separate credible polls. But incredibly, the vice president, the first woman of color ever to hold that high position, is approved of by even less Americans than the increasingly unpopular Joe Biden. In fact, 10% less, with a shocking 28% approval attached to her increasingly tarnished name. Some of the VP's widespread lack of appeal is her inability to connect with people on a personal level. Some is for her seeming ineffectiveness at the job, but some is for her embarrassing statements, the latest of which had her trying to sound like Pepe Le Pew on a state visit to France.
With us in government, we campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P, the plan. And then the environment is such that we're expected to defend the plan.
Remember that little guy on Fantasy Island who used to shout, "The plane, the plane"? Maybe in retrospect, that's who Kamala was trying to imitate. But no matter how you cut it, the outlook is bleak for this administration. How bad is it? Well, Senator Ted Cruz made a comparison that any Democratic president should avoid at all costs.
It feels like Joe Biden is Jimmy Carter all over again, and we're seeing skyrocketing inflation. We've seen gas lines. We've seen a Middle East crisis. We've seen hostages. We've seen surrender, in this case in Afghanistan. All of these problems are replicating. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the rest of the administration, they don't care. Look, they want you not to be able to fill up gas in your car. They want your electricity bill to be higher. They want your heating bill to be higher. And the cruelty, of course, it doesn't impact them. The Democratic elites will still fly on their private planes everywhere they go. And the working people, they just say, let them eat cake.
Indeed, they carry on with their green energy plan, even as the unwashed masses pay 60% more at the pump than when Joe Biden took office. And heating bills are set to skyrocket over the winter. Marie Antoinette, indeed, let them eat kale, I guess. But this administration has a big-time perception problem when they call inflation a high-class problem. And then there are apologists on MSNBC like Stephanie Ruhle talks down to the masses, reiterating that inflation is no big deal.
The dirty little secret here, Willie, while nobody likes to pay more, on average, we have the money to do so. Household savings hit a record high over the pandemic. We didn't really have anywhere to go out and spend. And as we said a moment ago, we're expecting retail sales this holiday season to break records. For those who own their homes, the value of our homes are up. And while the stock market isn't the economy, you got over half of American households with some investment in the markets, and the markets have hit record highs. So we need to put all of this in perspective.
Right. So don't worry if, like so many others, you're living paycheck to paycheck, that gas is up 60%, home heating up, 40%, food prices soaring. Don't you understand? Your betters have deemed it no big deal. It's just transitory, they tell us, soon to pass, merely a blip on the radar screen. Well, they better hope that's true, because if it's not, the Democrats will be severely punished by the voters in 2022. And speaking of being punished, the people of Texas probably aren't sure whether to laugh or cry with the latest announcement from Beto O'Rourke, man-child, after embarrassing himself and failing miserably in his run for president and losing for the Senate. There's only one more place to go.
I'm running for governor, and I want to tell you why. They're focusing on the kind of extremist policies around abortion or permitless carry, or even in our schools, that really only divide us and keep us apart and stop us from working together on the truly big things that we want to achieve for one another. It's a really small vision for such a big state.
If man-child Beto, who despite his concocted name is white as white can possibly be, Robert Francis O'Rourke, if he gets the nomination for governor, the race between him and the wildly popular incumbent Greg Abbott promises to be must-see TV. Beto is among those guilt-ridden Caucasians who grovel at the feet of race hustlers, peddling the notion of America as a systemically racist nation. But the elections this month confirmed that Americans have had more than enough of being made to feel either like oppressors or victims. Nevertheless, we got another sequel to the Poisonous 1619 project this week. And the author and founder of the project, centered around critical race theory, Nicole Hannah-Jones, says the gross historical inaccuracies in it have nothing to do with the attacks on the malignant premise of the project that America was founded for the purpose of furthering slavery. No, it's all because of, well, you know.
What I learned is, one, that you can do all of the things that we are told we are to do to be successful. And in the end, as a Black woman, you can still be denied.
Right. Attacks on the 1619 project have only to do with the author's race and nothing to do with her helping to incite a race war in this country. Switching gears, it was perhaps entirely unsurprising that the Kyle Rittenhouse trial became a proxy battle for left versus right. Conservatives thinking, at least privately, that the guy's a brave patriot. Leftists thinking him a white supremacist vigilante murderer. The trial and battle was played out in the media as much as in the courtroom. And no-nonsense Judge Bruce Schroeder, who might be the bookend to arguably the worst high-profile judge of all time, the infamous Judge Lance Ito of OJ trial fame, upbraided the media to the point of second-guessing himself on televising the trial.
When I talked about problems with the media when this trial started, we're there in part, not fully, but in part, because of grossly irresponsible handling of what comes out of this trial. I will tell you this, I'm going to think long and hard about live television of a trial again next time. I don't know. I've always been a firm believer in it because I think the people should be able to see what's going on, but when I see what's being done, it's really quite frightening.
So given how getting out of bed is a political event these days, the real long-term legacy of this Rittenhouse trial may well be a trend away from televising these high-profile events, which becomes a worthy subject for debate at another time. So climate change extremists and some responsible environmentalists, we would suppose or hope, all flew into Scotland for the recent much ballyhooed COP26 summit in their elite private transportation, leaving a massive carbon footprint as they demand an end to the very fossil fuels that drive their entire lifestyles. The true climate radicals said even the extreme measures these people propose to save the planet, all but shutting down industry, are not enough. Net zero is not nearly enough, says the leader of the socialist band AOC.
When we see this thing of net zero by 2050, they're like, yeah, like this is great. This is a huge transition, like all of those things. And that might be relative to the status quo now, but for us, that's really not good enough. So let's talk about why net zero by 2050 is not really acceptable for young people. And this was really one of the central calls from the streets and protesters outside of COP this year. It was net zero by 2050 is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, it is ridiculous, but for the opposite reason she stated. It's ridiculous because, quite simply, let's bring it down to a level that even the left can understand. The world we know, everything we do, our entire lifestyle, driven by fossil fuels, would cease to exist likely in a world of net zero emissions. And with 100% certainty, in a world with zero carbon emissions. Back to Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.